Hello? Hi everyone. Today we're going to continue with a course on SI storage. Previously, we introduced the development of storage, architecture, and now it's time to talk about the media within that architecture. Essentially, we're focusing on the development process from a single disk to multiple disks, disk arrays, network storage, distributed storage, and so on. So what does this storage medium mean today? It actually refers to the types of hard drives we have and the history of their development. First, let's introduce the first type. In fact, we mentioned this when we introduced the storage architecture. How big was the first hard disk in the 1950s? It was about the size of a large refrigerator. The refrigerator is large for the disk. The capacity was only 5 megabytes. Of course, for that time, it was already quite impressive. But as time progressed, we can see that over the decades, the size gradually shrank, while the capacity steadily increased. Here, if we look from the 1950s, we have the IBM 1301. Its size had already reached 28 megabytes, and then with the 3340 version, the main advancement was that it could be fitted into a box. Here, we have the IBM 1301 from the 1950s. What is its size? It has reached 28 megabytes. It has reached 28 megabytes. With the 3340 version, its major improvement is that it can be put into a box. It wasn't that big anymore. It had become compact enough to fit into a 14-inch box. The capacity reached 30 megabytes. The capacity reached 30 megabytes. And from then on, every 10 years, you can see that our capacity continued to increase. The size is also decreasing. By the 1970s, it had reached 8 inches. Then between 1980 and 1988, it shrank again. Then, by the 1980s, it shrank again, down to 5 inches, and finally, it got as small as 2.5 inches. By the 1990s, it had already reached 1.8 and 0.85 inches, which is really, really small. It's just a single disk, and that single disk only has 1 inch, the size of 1 inch. Well, this is actually it. The overall development process of hard disks is that they are getting smaller and smaller, and their capacity is also getting larger and larger. As for the capacity here, it reaches, by the time we got to the IBM 3340, it was 30 megabytes, which is indeed quite small, right? At least it's relatively small. Then starting from the 1970s, the growth rate of hard drives was the storage density grows by about 25% to 30% each year. Starting from the 1990s, the growth rate reached 60% to 80%. By 1997, our growth rate even hit 100%. And at its peak, it reached 200%. This means that the size of our disks was getting larger and larger. So, at this point, actually, basically by the 1990s, by the early 21st century, our mechanical hard drives had fully developed and become very advanced. You could say that their size was such that you could easily hold one in one hand. You can even hold several in one hand. And as for the storage size, each one has at least a few terabytes or even tens of terabytes of space. So this is the history of the development of mechanical hard drives. So now, of course, the A drive is still in use, right? It's not that it disappeared in the 1990s. Even today, the A drive is still widely used. This is our first type of hard drive. Next, let's take a look at the second type. The second type is, what about our solid-state drives? Its emergence was actually quite early, just about 10 to 20 years later than mechanical drives. However, there was a small issue, which is that due to the rapid development of mechanical drives, especially towards the end of the 20th century, the speed of development was very fast, and they were gradually getting smaller, and the capacity was also gradually increasing. So the solid-state drives weren't really used that much from the 1990s to the early 21st century. Until what? Until around 2011. As the cost continues to drop and the size keeps increasing, it gradually re-enters the public's view. Actually, it has been around for quite a while, but it had a big problem, as you can see here. The capacity was too small, right? By 2006, the capacity was only 32 gigabytes at that time. At this time, as for solid-state drives, well, it's already calculated in terabytes, so actually it hasn't been given much attention. until around 2020 when our solid-state drives gradually started to rise. And their size saw significant growth. And the price has also relatively decreased a bit. One of its main features is what? It's the fast speed. Maybe initially the capacity was indeed small. There was no way around it. As the technology updates, it becomes bigger and bigger. The capacity becomes bigger and bigger. And what else? The prices are getting lower and lower. And it is also relatively small. That is, compared with a mechanical hard drive and a solid-state drive of the same size. It can be more than 10 times lighter, right? It can be more than 10 times lighter. The size is also several times smaller. So here, actually this. Overall, our solid-state drives have indeed faced some limitations in their early development, primarily due to their size. However, their speed is really fast. Like, extremely fast. In terms of speed, it's dozens of times faster, specifically for our solid-state drives. For hard disk drives, there's at least a several-fold improvement. According to some official data, the speed of hard disk drives is about 100 to 200 megabytes per second. Because there are different brands, the range is still quite large, about 100 to 200 megabytes. For hard disk drives, the same goes for solid-state drives. Due to different brands, there are also various models, with speeds roughly between 3,000 to 7,000 megabytes per second. In comparison, it's about a 30 to 40 times improvement. The speed of solid-state drives is about 30 to 40 times faster than that of hard disk drives, especially in terms of read speed. This is actually one of the benefits of our solid-state drives. And if you want to use both our hard disk drive and solid-state drive to install a system at the same time, the boot-up speed, it should be at least 2 to 3 times faster, at least 2 to 3 times the speed. These are the main benefits of our solid-state drives, including our latency and response time. For solid-state drives, it only takes 0.1 milliseconds. 0.1 milliseconds, not 0.1 seconds, but 0.1 milliseconds. For hard disk drives, it takes about 5 to 10 milliseconds. There's a difference of about 50 to 100 times. This issue is a basic comparison of the two. From here, we can see that in terms of speed, our solid-state drives are far faster than mechanical drives. It's fast, really fast, dozens to hundreds of times faster, no problem at all. So, if that's the case, shouldn't hard disk drives have been eliminated by now? Of course not. First of all, solid-state drives are definitely still more expensive than hard disk drives. That's one reason. Secondly, in terms of lifespan, our hard disk drives tend to last a bit longer, just a bit longer. So here actually, the main application scenarios for both are quite different, and there's not much conflict, which is why they can coexist. Our hard disk drives have a larger capacity, as their capacity is indeed quite big. And also, the cost is relatively low. Honor has a low cost. Although the speed isn't fast, it's very suitable for long-term storage, especially for long-term cold storage. As for our solid-state drives, well, the reason they're relatively expensive is that, first, they are indeed pricier. Their speed is really fast, but they do come at a higher cost, and their lifespan is slightly shorter. Basically, it's solid-state drives have a shorter lifespan compared to hard disk drives, by a little bit. It's about a 50% reduction, down to around 6% to 70%. Of course, this depends on different brands and models. So here, solid-state drives are indeed fast, but they are not suitable for long-term data storage. So in situations where you need to store data for a long time, like backing up data, or when the read or write requirements are relatively low, we should choose hard disk drives instead. If your read and write requirements are very high and you just need speed, nothing else, just speed, that's fast enough. For example, when you're deploying some software, setting up services, installing systems, and so on. For situations where speed requirements are high, we can choose our solid-state drives. This is really a matter of choice between the two. They don't really conflict with each other. Each has its own role and direction, so neither will be eliminated. At least not in the short term. So this is basically the situation with the two types of disks. For today, we'll stop here. If anyone wants to learn about Huawei's cognitive technology or wants to get Huawei certification question banks, feel free to message me privately or leave a comment below the video for technical discussions. Alright, that's it for today.